All right, guys, let's check out the Memphis DBLOCKPGM. This little distribution block is kind of cool in some ways and also kind of weird in one way, and I'll show you. Now, first of all, what you see here isn't exactly what you get. What you get will have some little rubber plugs here and rubber plugs here and a little rubber strip right here. And all of that is to make this a marine grade distribution block. Of course, you're sealing up all of that, but then this plastic top just sort of sits on there. Anyway, not really exactly waterproof, but it is splash proof. So inside, you've got alt gauge in, alt gauge in. These will also be out, so you can go in and back out again. And then you've got an alt gauge ground coming in. So this is a positive and positive, and that one there in the middle is a ground. It goes down here and connects to this block, which gives you 2 4 or 8 gauge out grounds here and 4 or 8 gauge out positives here. And the ground block goes on over to this strip right here, which gives you 4 little small grounds out right here. The positive block goes over here behind the fuses and goes through these little worm screws here, which allows you to run wires in these holes here and run them over here to give you 4 positives with their all individual fuses. And these two guys here also have 2 mini A&L fuses. So you've got 2 fused outs, 4 fused outs, 2 ground outs, 4 ground outs. Notice those numbers match. Then you've got a positive and a positive in, or a positive in and out and a ground in. So that's how the connections work. The good is that it's fairly compact and it gives you quite a lot of input-output availability. It's also very well made, as far as this is that fiberglass impregnated plastic. So it's really hard, and it also has a very high melting temperature. So even if it gets hot, it shouldn't go to pieces. Another good point about it is all of the worm screws use the same size Allen head. Okay, so one Allen wrench for the whole kit. I like that. Also, the fact that this metal right here and these blocks are not plated. This is the same material all the way through. And I do not like plated blocks. And the reason plated blocks are bad, whenever you see a block that's shiny like this, it's usually metal like this underneath, and then that metal is plated with a chrome plating to make it look pretty. The problem is that chrome plating can break loose and cause your connection to get loose. And a loose connection only gets worse. It'll get hot, spark, melt, warp and twist and mangle. And then before you know it, you've got a melted fuse holder and possibly a melted car. So we like solid all the way through, non-plated metal blocks. These are those. I like that. I also like the fact that there's no metal down here protruding through the bottom. So you have a nice insulated bottom to mount down, and you don't have to worry about anything coming through there. This is some pretty thick plastic. It's a good 1/8 of an inch thick. So you got some pretty good plastic. It's not going to melt easy. It's going to be a pretty solid piece of kit. Now let's get to the thing that I find odd. So you'll notice that there's 1 screw missing. There's 3 screws and there's 1 missing. I'm going to explain why that's happening. So if you're going to put this together in your car, right, you got your big wires running, and you want to connect a wire to this output, right? So first thing you have to do is take this screw out completely. It would help. I think I had the wrong one. Pretty sure it's this. I thought it was. Okay, there we go. First thing you have to do is take this screw out. Then inside here, there's a grub screw. One of those little worm drive screws. You back that out. Then you connect your wire, put your wire in there. So get it down there. Now, if you try to connect something that's a little bit squishy or smaller than an 8 gauge, this is an 8 gauge wire, by the way, with a ferrule on it. You got that connected. Then you get your fuse on here and you put this back in here and you screw this thing down on top of that to attach your fuse. Now, this does work. Okay. I mean, it tightens up and it's all the way flat. So if there's a fuse in there, and it's holding, it's a solid connection. Okay. But why? Why not just extend this thing out a half an inch this way and add 2 screws, one for the fuse and one for the set, just like they did on this end? Why go through the trouble of creating this double stacked up thing? Although, like I was thinking to myself, this is really, it's well thought out and that it works. And it does shorten up the piece and make it smaller and more compact. If that's the ultimate thing you're shooting for, then okay. You could do that on both ends if you wanted to. Sort of. It would be tricky because you need big wires here, little wires here. But still, I get that. However, unless you're really specifically trying to get it to this exact size, I don't understand why they would use this type of connection. Now I want to explain why this one doesn't have a screw in it. Okay, and that is because a friend of mine was using this on an install. And he put the wire in there without a ferrule, by the way. It was just a bare wire, which is what you normally would do anyway. Nice twisted up wire in the hole. He put the worm screw in there, and the worm screw screwed through, and then it just sort of got jammed up. And yeah, it couldn't get back out. There was no way to get it out. It kind of fell in and it wouldn't come out, and it went all the way through, So at trying to get it out, I wound up boogering the threads up as much as I could to get that out. And I did clear the hole, but it's going to have to be tapped again to make it work. But that's not the point. I'm not going to be using that anyway. The point is this design, this unnecessarily sketchy, little weird design, causes this type of issue. So if you get this thing, there's a couple of pieces of advice I want to give you. First of all, use ferrules especially if you're going to use 8 gauge wire. Especially if you're going to use 8 gauge, use ferrules on your wire. And honestly, you should be using ferrules anyway. They make this stuff super easy and super convenient to use. And I use ferrules on everything now that I possibly can. If you don't know what ferrules are, this is a ferrule. And for all different size wires. And I also have ferrule crimpers, which I use to crimp anything from an 8 gauge down. So use ferrules. Don't expect it to be waterproof, because it's not. I think I had that right to begin with. There we go. Nope. It looks like how it goes. There it goes. All right. So you see you have your little slot there. And there is a little rubber deal that comes in the kit that will sort of seal it off. Again, though, there's nothing stopping water from getting in around the cracks. There's a crack all the way around. These will all be closed off. So, I mean, it's kind of water resistant. Now, granted, it does look good. It's a good looking setup. It's small and compact, and it gives you a lot of I/O. The wire management will be really neat and orderly because all your inputs could theoretically be here, output to be lined up nice in a row, so it would look good. The problem I have with it is for this design, which is great, the flawed part with that weird bolt situation being the only real negative, the only real problem I have besides this weirdness is that this thing is $70. It's a $70 block, you know? I mean, there's stuff out there that's similar to this that's significantly less expensive and doesn't do this weird stuff.